everybody. Happy Monday to you. Well, I believe I mentioned some teeth gritting would be involved, and that is what we're going through right now. The bounce is well underway, which, as I said, paradoxically, I welcome because we got to get this done. And I don't know, my spidey sense is that maybe the Fed on Wednesday will kind of wrap up this bounce. But yeah, we're moving apace. I'm glad for the cash I've got. It's actually higher now because I got a little carried away with all the tumbling. So I entered a position or two that really wasn't a great idea. So I've got my cash like 50% plus at this point. So a lot of dry powder, a couple of flesh wounds, but it's still a really cool market. So I've got the charts ready for you, and let's jump in. And we begin, as always, with a spider. And we have been, we basically bottomed on Thursday. So the open on Thursday was pretty close to the bottom. I beg your pardon, the close on Thursday was pretty close to the bottom. Then we rallied mightily on Friday, and then also today. This line is here to mark last Monday's high. It does not necessarily mean it's important resistance at all. I just sort of left that as a marker right there. I'll show you some other charts later that suggest, in fact, the last chart is the S&P, what seems like a sensible target point. Here is the VIX. Now we are easing down on this, and I want to just switch gears and show you a little chart I made for the weekend because I was curious to myself, after the VIX peaks, which in recent months has been in the upper 20s, how long does it take to deflate? How long does it take for it to be reasonable to be bearish again? And the good news is that it's not months. It's actually tends to be measured in not even weeks, but days. And I measured out over the past year the deflation instances. And as you can see, 9 days, 14, 9, 4, 7, 4, something like a little shy of a couple of weeks, a week or two, something like that. And we peaked on the VIX ourselves last Tuesday. And so we got up to around 30. We're at around 20 now. We're flirting with the teens. I had a pun about that, but I'll just leave it aside. But anyway, we've burned off about a third of the VIX in its entirety, and the VIX gets cheap like at 14 or 15. And I don't know if we'll necessarily get that low, but my point is that we're on our way. And today's we're up almost 60 points in the ES. We're up over 200 on the NQ. The bounce is blazing because to those with pretty short-term memories, the market seems really cheap right now. So pretty cool stuff. So it won't be too long to deal with this, I don't think. Moving on, the Diamond ETF. This one, and again, to emphasize, this is not a resistance point. This merely was anchored to this low. But we bottomed here, and we're blasting higher. And as I said, near the end, we'll look at some more kind of rational targets for where things might exhaust themselves. Here's the cubes, bottomed like so, and pushing higher. And there's the really powerful resistance is this trend line, of course. I don't know if we'll necessarily get that high, but let's keep moving. Semiconductors, SMH. Now, in this instance, we've come a long way. We bottomed here, and to my eyes, the first meaningful level of resistance is right there, and that is not far at all away. Semiconductors kind of led the way down during the tumble, and so kind of internally they're the most vulnerable. So we're actually getting close to what could be a reasonable resistance point. Now, I would caution and say that XOP pulled the same stunt, and it went raging right into its pattern. So just because there's a cute little line there doesn't mean it's going to just stop. But we take these a level at a time, and it isn't there so far. So that's our first observation point. Sticking with semiconductors for a sec, NVIDIA, as I pointed out last week, got so low it got even a little below its supporting trend line. It's gone zipping higher, and we're getting close to A slightly important resistance line right there. AMD up strongly, up almost 5%. This has been battered and mashed, getting close to this level like so. Broadcom, not up much. Pretty poor performance on Broadcom's part. In fact, in a way, it kind of peaked. This little bounce peaked last week, and we opened quite weak today. We're here right now, but really just grinding away, and even worse than that, on semiconductor. Considering the depths that it plunged, not that much of a rally, just a couple of percent at this point for ON. I would also point out, as an aside, Apple. I don't mention it much here because it's a really interesting chart on a multi-decade perspective, but short term I don't really bother with it. But it's interesting in as much as we do have this interesting little top right here. It was actually red earlier today, which is incredible in this market. But this is the key, and this is a key that should be watched in the weeks or even months ahead. The very, very long-term channel midline, which has not broken or been violated really since way back about half a decade ago. So that'll be worth watching as well. Tesla. The Fibonacci's, like every other time, they won the day. Look at this. So we peaked here. I don't even have to look. It's the 18th. And then, so we fell, found support. Bounced, fell, found support, kept supporting, and snap, there it goes. It's in a new range now. Down, 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 down. Pause right there. Nope, it's so weak that it falls and then rallies up to the same Fibonacci pair, finds resistance there, falls really hard, way down here, and then last week starts to rally here and then way up here. But look what happened. So this Fibonacci pair is what I mentioned as important resistance. The level itself, 250.17. The highest we got, which I guess is on Wednesday, 251.84, which is like 0.6% above the Fib. Really did a good job. So resistance, 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 and now even in this very green day, turning south. So Tesla is still very vulnerable. The next really major support, of course, way down here with this Fib pair, and then even more dramatically, this trend line way down here. So we're talking about, a price starting with the digit 1, which is pretty grim. So like 180, 190, something like that. EFA, amazingly, lifetime high, just gone raging higher. So I'm staying away from the blast zone on that one. And just mentioned anecdotally, Baba, big Chinese internet stock, having a very strong day too, up almost 5%, having come off this enormous base. So this is a new recovery high for Baba. We didn't really talk about brokers much during the sell-off, but they really got zapped hard. This is just one Interactive Brokers. This peaked at around 236, and within a few weeks' time, it fell down to around 160. So very big drop there. Look at the gap. Got very close to the gap, just about sealed it, and now it's rallying. And I see another gap. Let's just throw a line right down like so, in terms of an important resistance zone like that. Quantum is reliving its fad. D-Wave, QBTS, having another strong day, approaching lifetime highs on this. This is a typo, ignore that symbol. Rigetti also enjoyed a nice little rally that's kind of stalling out right now. The one that kind of caught my eye, and God help me actually put in a small short position on it, was this quantum company, IonQ. It was very interesting to me, and I've got to stop right at that line just above it, so 26.41. But it seems to me, if you look at this top, and this top, and this bottom, and this bottom, this seems to be a creature that respects its own formations, if that makes any sense. So we'll see how that goes. But I've got to, I normally wouldn't go near quantum stuff, but I'm going to give it a shot. Got a short position on IonQ. Gold, huzzah. Another record high, solidly above 3,000. I see the futures front month is up, not much, 0.22%, but it's still a record. So gold continues to do great. Miners doing very well. GDX up over 2%. So this is just eyeballing this. This is the highest it's been for 13 years, something like that. Pretty impressive. And one item you may not have heard of before, but this is an interesting little hybrid OUNZ, like ounce. This is a gold plus silver investment instrument. And as you can see, it's been having a grand old time. It's also at lifetime highs. Getting back to the looming question, how high the bounce? How high the bounce? I've got a few odds and ends that help on that, I think. One is the IWM small cap ETF. And in this instance, and we can just reflect back here, we had a top here, big fall, and then it worked its way back to the pattern and then fell in earnest. And we actually stayed in this range for way more than a year, I think. Here's the new pattern, big fall, starting to recover, but as you can see, not there yet. So this definitely could have more life in it. I would also say, don't forget the importance of crypto in terms of this, the kind of psychology, the risk on, risk off feeling. And this is mired down in the mid 80s, still around 84 and change. But if this began to sell off and get back into the upper 70s, that would help the overall bearish case. But more specifically, and I went through all my index charts this weekend, because anytime we talk about Fibonacci, it's usually Tesla, but it applies to other stuff as well. And there were some index charts where this really worked out nicely. Here's three. Here's the NASDAQ composite. And in this case, we've got a fib that starts at the bottom back in around Halloween 2023, and of course peaks at the lifetime high. And so these lines are drawn automatically. Look at this. Check out this green line. Let's zoom in nice and close on that. Is that amazing? Look, there's the line. And this was, it was just falling like mad and then put on the brakes. Support, 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 and then finally starts taking off. So those fib levels, very, very cool. And it just eyeballing this a little more than halfway done with the bounce. So we could have another day like today, tomorrow, and then maybe some more little gravy on the turkey on Wednesday. But as I said, the next kind of pivot point could be Powell. The Russell 2000, we've touched on this by way of the IWM. This had fallen quite deeply in this fib range, but now it's starting to rally. And so this is what we're working toward. And as I said, just kind of roughly speaking, maybe about halfway done with the bounce. And then sort of ending where we began, the S&P 500. In this range, the fib goes from farther back, about a year farther back. In fact, the big bottom, October 13, 2022, all the way up to the lifetime high. And this is like, was eye-popping to me. Look at this. This is amazing. There's Thursday's low. There's the line that it like opened exactly at the fib. And then off to the races. Cool stuff, huh? Really cool stuff. So there's the fibs for you. And in this instance, the fibs are based on such a long pattern that we don't have a line to show where the bounce might terminate. But I sort of roughed out a zone here that kind of smells about right to me in terms of an exhaustion point. Call it something like, 5,800, round about there.